and then at the graft point, which is this point here, it's the G3 from there up. So this is our next, this is what we've got to, this is our future, and I've taken it off here. So what we're looking to see is how many what we call king flowers are available in here, and you can see the bigger flowerets, and basically once you get to once this gets to this long, we're starting to see the flowers, and I was just looking for one that's a bit longer. They're all fairly consistent in here,
and the flowers will become fruit,
so at this point we are talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably 6 flower sources, and the flowers come from the base of the leaf. Each leaf junction has a flower until it gets so long, and then it stops producing flowers and just continues to produce leaf. So so at this point we can start to say, all right, if we have a cane this long, for example, and you've got flowers producing from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, 23. You then say, well, if there's 5 flowers, multiply that by 23, that starts to give you an idea of how many flowers you have in the orchard. Because we work out the length of the bay by what we call the width of the bay and the distance between the rows, and that's your square meterage. And so you can work out that if there is there's 120 buds in there, and that's about a square meter. We've got and it's a 20, well maybe less than that, if it's an area of, let's say it's in this case 10 square meters, and we've got 120 buds per square meter, we've got 1,200 flowers, potential fruit. Way too much. So then you work out how you're going to thin it. And so that's the next process. So, sustainability, talking about sustainability in this is every year this produces on last year's grown cane. So for example, this fruited last year, you can see by, these are what's called fruit stalks, and then it carried on to grow. In this case it was up a string, and it fruits on there. Whereas this piece, this is the year before's piece, this is the year before's, so it doesn't fruit, this is what I say, it only fruits. So sustainability from our point of view is cutting out old wood and keeping last year's growing wood, always second year wood. And then of course the trick is to make sure that you keep it back towards what we call the leader, which is in the structure point of view, that's your leader, and trying to keep your fruit back here as much as you can, because then you have fruit from there to here, to here, to here, to here, and then you stop your fruit just before your male, because this is your male. All right. Any thoughts, any questions, any ideas?
Does the fruit closer to the vine there, that main?
Yep.
Does that have any advantage over, say, the fruit at the end, Ivan?
Yes. Usually find that in here it's often bigger, because it's growing. The food source is coming out of your roots up to your vine and then into your. But your higher dry matter is out here.
What does it mean?
Dry matter is we test by cutting a fruit. You'll see it when you go to the lab. You cut the fruit, you weigh what we call a wet piece of kiwi fruit, a slice, and then you dehydrate it for 8 hours or 12 hours, and then you weigh it again. And it's the difference between, it's your soluble sugars, your dried soluble sugars. And then there's a calculation that tells you how much dry matter it is. And we pick on that, and it is considered that the taste is better with a higher dry matter. We've all eaten into something, into an apple, into something, and just, yeah, that's sour. The last thing we want, and especially in the Asian market, is a sour tasting fruit. They don't like sour tasting fruit. They like sweeter fruit, and hence, and going further in that, is those markets, we will give them a higher dry matter fruit than we will into the Asian market, who are quite happy to have a little bit of tang and aftertaste. But that's and growers get paid accordingly. They really do.
I've got a question. What's all with all the lines on this?
Yep. So these are what we call girdles. Girdles is using a knife, similar to an ordinary knife, but it has two sharp edges to it and a curve. And what we do, this is to encourage dry matter. This is what it does, is you take a chunk out of the bark, and you're just touching the cambium layer. We know what cambium layer is. It's the source. It's the layer that takes the food from the roots up to the plant, and vice versa. So by cutting that, it temporarily stops the plant producing. It makes the plant. Sorry, I'll go back. What it does is it stops the source of food coming out of the roots, and it makes the plant create carbohydrates in the leaves, which is what it's been getting out of the roots. And what that does is it creates in the fruit a higher carbohydrate loading, therefore the relationship is that you have a sweeter and a higher dry matter fruit. So these are just little tools we use, and we'll do 2 of those a year. We'll do one of these about late December, early January, and then we'll do another one in February, and it just gives that plant a shock.
So it kind of freaks out because it's not getting its source and creates its own.
And creates its own.
Wow.
Because it's got huge leaves sitting up here. What it's doing is the photosynthesis in the leaf is creating a certain amount, which is sending it back down into the roots, but it's not creating carbohydrates up here, and we are shocking it to create carbohydrates.
Wow.
So from the next step to this, we go on to what we call flowering, and that's when the flower comes out, and this is where this one comes in. And this is your male, and it has a massive flowers here, and we introduce bees. We bring bees in hives and put them in here, and you generally put in gold 5 hives, maybe 10 hives a hectare, depending on how much fruit. It's not as necessary to have a big number of hives as it is in the Haywood. And this one here flowers at the same time as this one here, so then you have the bees visiting. It takes approximately 3 visits a bee per flower, 3 bee visits a flower to pollinate these, where Haywood it takes anything up to 15 to 20 visits a flower. So, and these, they open up as a flower, they'll sit like that, and the bee, what the bee does is he comes over here and he likes the smell of these, so he or she will come along and they'll take the pollen out of these, which is the pollen producers, take it back to the hive, and as they come into the hive, it drops. And then then the next one out picks up, because the bee has on its legs has a whole lot of little furry things, and they will pick up those that pollen on themselves, and they go visit the female flower. So it's not a direct relationship, like this bee doesn't go here and comes, generally doesn't go from here to here. They each have different functions. As a bee, you know, within bees, a bee has a function, and it's a nectar collector, which means it's trying to find nectar source in here, taking it back to feed the brood. And the other ones they're pollen collectors, and then the other ones are nectar collectors, so they come out and they pick up the pollen, come out and pick up the goodies out of the female flower to take that back to feed the queen. So pollen feeds the brood, and nectar feeds the queen, and the queen feeds the hive and makes it more and more strong. So yeah, so it's a crucial time of the year.
So when's flowering, Ivan?
Flowering in this variety will be about the 15th of it'll be about the 15th of October.
Wow, so not far away.
No, sorry, November.
November.
Early mid-November, and Hayward generally is later in November to early December. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not far away. So in the meantime, these have grown, and they'll be, you know, quite a length. They grow fairly quickly.
So through summertime, what's happening in the whole process?
Through summertime, it is controlling the vegetation growth. What you don't want is your plant to end up looking like this. Now this is deliberate, because this is a male, and it'll be cut off after flowering. But all of these mean that you're creating a lot of leaves that are sucking the goodness out of the plant to grow. So what you do is you do what we call crush tipping or stubbing or whatever, and you limit the growth of anything out here. Anything out here is just shading your fruit, and it's just creating, apart from having enough leaf to sustain your fruit, you don't want it. So you only want it short. So you'll do things like crush tipping, you'll do things like cutting. You may not want it all together, so you might get rid of it, pull it out. And you'll also make sure that the fruit quality on each one of these is a good quality. So you're doing thinning relating to your fruit, so that when Y packs the fruit in the pack house, we give her as good a quality of fruit as we can, because otherwise you're creating waste, and it starts costing you money as a grower in your cost to pack the fruit. So yeah, that's what we do, and it's right through until February. That work goes right through until February. So
you can tell at an early stage when it's not good quality?
Yes.
And you get rid of it?
The shape of fruit determines the shape of the flower determines the final shape of the fruit.
Wow.
So if it's an odd shaped flower, it'll be an odd shaped fruit.
Wow.
Because every fruit is determined by how the flower is, and that goes for all flowering fruit, all fruiting flowers, I mean.
So at that stage you can pretty much get rid of it?
Yep. We can go through here, and we will do probably later in October, we'll do what they call flower thimming. And then you've got shoots this long, and you've got these flowers hanging down, and they're fairly distinct. And we will go through and we'll take off anything that's a triple. And you can see that there. See, there's a little one off to one side. And some places they're far more pronounced than that. There's another one there. So anywhere where there are those extra, we'll take those off, leaving what we call a king flower, which is your major flower on the end of a stalk. So yeah, you can see a few of them there. And so we determine that, and then we'll look at that flower and say, okay, that one's a nice round shape. This one here might be oblong, or it might be banana shaped. We'll get rid of that flower if we can. You'll see flowers. You'll start to see, just various different shapes of flower that you can get rid of, and that lessens your chance that it's going to cost you money at the other end. So every bad fruit, or every percentage of bad fruit, costs you money at packing time.
Wow, didn't know that.
Right, what else?
Any questions, you guys?
I think probably things like we all hear about the dreaded high cane. We use high cane. High cane is, to us, is a necessary evil. It's a what we call a growth regulator. So all high cane does is it actually burns these buds, or at least gets to the buds and makes them shoot like this. So in other words, it regulates the timing of when these buds open. As you can see, when you look at this, every single bud has opened. If it hadn't been high caned, what you'd find is this one here, bud might be that long, and this bud here may only be that long, and it just creates variability within your orchard. So that's what high cane does. It's a growth regulator. So then you have other things that we do from the sustainability point of view. We know we have PSA in the orchards. Every single orchard around here has PSA. It's in the plants, it's in the air, because PSA is a what we call a flagellate. It's the easiest way to explain, it's like a sperm. It swims in water. So every time we have water in the orchard, this thing starts swimming. It's there. It's sitting in very, very small amount on these leaves, on the bark, anywhere. And as soon as you have a droplet of water, of course it swims, multiplies, and multiplies incredibly fast. So we use various tools to reduce the infection in the orchard, because we want to make sure we get a crop out the other end. So we use what we call coppers, which is a spray which it's like having a raincoat on. You put several sets of spray on, and it builds up a barrier right across, because every one of these that's come out, unless it's sprayed recently, is now unprotected. So you put on a spray, and as these develop out through from the bud themselves, they push past the barrier of copper, and they pick up a certain amount of protection as they go. So then you respray, and you continue to spray throughout 2 and 3 times throughout the growing period to ensure that the PSA hasn't attacked your plant. And anything that if we have some seriously major rain events, like cold rain over the next 2 or 3 months, we will use other products such as a key strepto, which is or another thing called Casamin, which is a bactericide, which basically, if you've had a bad event and you know you have PSA, because every orchard has it, we put this stuff on, and it's like nuking every organism in the orchard. Not good for the orchard, but it reduces your PSA population to a point where it's manageable again. And then we use basically 3 fertilizer dressings throughout the year. We will do what we call a base dressing. It may have a lime in it. A lime is a pH neutralizer, and it lifts pH level, because you have a certain amount of a certain range of pH you want in your soil, and that's sort of 6 to 7.5, and that is your best, that we can determine the best pH level for growing kiwi fruit. I think it's 6.2. But so we put on a base fertilizer, which is some good growing, and that's done before these buds come out. We put on another one as these buds come out, what we call a side dressing, which is a small quantity. It's only a couple of 100 kilos a hectare, so it's not much. And then we'll put another one on just at flowering, because what's happening is until these leaves get to sort of a reasonable size, it's actually using the store out of the roots. It's using what's in the ground. And once it gets up to a reasonable size, then it starts having photosynthesis and starts to feed from above as well as under the ground. So this thing is growing really, really rapidly, and at the height of spring, you can see shoots grow anything up to 300 mils a day.
Wow.
It just really goes berserk. So it's sucking a lot of goodies out of, and a lot of nutrient out of your roots, out of your main leader, and everywhere else. So and that's what you're doing. You're building its ability.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yep.
The high cane and the copper.
Yep.
Whatever they are. Do they have a negative effect on the soil?
High cane doesn't. High cane is neutral once it hits the soil. Coppers we do. We have we try to not put anything more than 6 elemental coppers on, or kilos of copper on a year. And every spray you're probably putting on 300 to 500 grams of copper, elemental copper, per spray. So we can watch the amount of copper that goes on in sprays to determine how much we're putting on. And we know we are getting a slight build-up of copper within the soil because it's a heavy metal. But at this stage, the industry considers keeping the plant alive, and keeping the industry alive is
outweighs.
more advantageous than worrying too much about coppers. We are worried about it, which is why we have the limit. But
yeah.
So I think one of the questions says, why kiwi fruit in this area? Well, you can actually see that when you look at this, you look at the soil, this could be, it's probably about that deep of black soil before you hit a clay base, maybe even deeper. And this is typical sandy loam soil, Kaharoa ash is its actual name, that is perfect for growing kiwi fruit. So you dig down, you dig a spade down, and it's a decent, 300, 600 mil of soil on top. You go to other places and it may only be 200 mil, it may be 100 mil, over and above a wet base, a peat base. And the other thing to this is, as we cut out at winter time last year's growth, this is what it ends up being. It ends up being a mulch, a humus in the soil. So over the years, this humus has been mulched up along with grass, along with leaf and fruit, because we thin off fruit, and it's creating a humus within the soil base. So you're constantly reinvigorating the soil that's here. And then you can go, you can't really see it that much, but you can see your worm activity. You can see your little piles where your worm has been working. And you get a little bit of rain and you'll see all of these little piles will turn up, and that tells you how much worm you have within your soil. So the more of those, obviously the better humus you've got, the better plant material and compost and what have you that's within your soil base.
we've talked about sunshine hours, rainfall.
Yes. Yep. Sunshine hours are very critical, in particular in that January, February, March period. January, February, March, we've had traditionally high sunshine hours, which is, from dawn to dusk, very little cloud. And where we have good sunshine hours, we have good photosynthesis in the leaf, and then we have the practices of reducing the leaf number per fruit, and that creates therefore a better fruit rather than just growing vegetation. So your sunshine hours, it came out to a 3 years ago where we had 2 or 3 years ago where we had rain from February through to almost May. Every day we had rainy weather, and we had a very poor dry matter year as a result, because the fruit, it was growing, but it wasn't creating, the sun wasn't creating the benefit of photosynthesis in the leaf, and therefore we had lower dry matter. Whereas the year just gone, we had a reasonably high dry matter year because the sun, it stopped raining regularly in February, and we had fine weather through until May and some really, really hot days, and we had a higher dry matter year as a result.
Bless you.
So chilling, the other side of that is chilling during May, June, July, and that's your frost hours, that's your chill hours down below 7 degrees. And for an orchard, that is what's setting these buds. You know, we talked about these buds being set by frost. After the fruit's gone and you get rid of your leaf, that's what, that's your chilling hours set that bud for the coming season. And they, so if you have a higher chilling number, which is hours, as I say, below 7 degrees, it's considered that it gives you a better bud break and it gives you a better floral break. Floral break is the number of flowers you have for every single shoot you have. And we're seeing that this year. We had quite a good bud break. So we're expecting to see a very big year fruit-wise this year, fruit numbers-wise. And the only thing that will change that will be Mother Nature throwing a curveball at her, where she throws us a late frost, or we have a cyclone or whatever. Mother Nature. That's what you're living against, Mother Nature. And that's why we call her. All right. Anything else you kids can think of?
Any questions, you guys?
Right, we'll get back towards.
Okay, that's awesome.
Because we're going to be